Welcome to Good Morning Hospitality, your one-stop shop for the latest news, noteworthy trends, and thought-provoking discussions across the industry. From hotels and short-term rentals to all things travel and hospitality, you'll find each episode equips you with the information you need to start your week. Join us on Good Morning Hospitality every Tuesday, wherever you get your podcasts. Good morning, Sarah.
Good morning, Leo. And I see another face on here this morning as well. Good morning, Paul.
Yes, hi Sarah, hi Leo. Great to be on. Actually, this is my first time on a live virtual GMH.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you for having me.
It's your first virtual, not your first. We obviously did it in, where were we in the world? Phoenix, I want to say. Was it
Phoenix,
Arizona?
God, that was only about 6 months ago, but already very different times.
A lot has changed in that time. So obviously, Paul, we wanted to get you on because you're going to talk. Well, join us for the whole show. But obviously, you're such a face in the industry. Sarah and I were using your articles probably weekly during your time at short-term rentals. So, just a quick 30 seconds, 10 seconds. You moved on. How are you finding? How are you finding life? You enjoying yourself?
Yeah, things are very different now. Of course, I am in the middle of some job searching as well, but also taking a little bit of time out. I'm doing a little bit of freelance for the STAA in the UK, which of course, Leo, you're part of too. But also trying to keep up on the article side as well. Expanding a little bit beyond short-term rentals and looking more at travel or some other interests, but still very much that resonance with this audience, and it gives me a chance to explore some of the wider topics or sometimes controversies too. And yes, I love it when we can generate a bit of debate and conversation too.
Great. Well, look, I'm looking forward to having you on to debate today. Feel free to be as argumentative as you want, Paul. That's what we want. Look, no pressure. But the last guest we had on was my 3-year-old daughter, Sadie. And, let's be honest, she stole the show. So, high bar for you.
I can't compete with that, to be honest.
Buddy. Yeah. Sarah, buddy, you're looking well today. What have you been up to?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess alcohol does me well. No, I went out, not out last night, but I had a bit of a celebration, like dinner and some drinks. One of my colleagues, Martina, is moving on to new opportunities, and so it was her last day at AirDNA, and it's really nice. Like, we just kind of everybody gathered around. We had some drinks on the terrace, and I was one of the stragglers as always. So, yeah, I woke up. I did do some yoga this morning, and also it's starting to get really hot in Barcelona, so I'm sure that's like the sweaty glow that you see on my face. Not anything to do with my actual skin.
Wine plus slightly hot. I like it.
Yeah.
Devilish combination. Well, look, I'm looking forward to you being one of the stragglers. Let's say. Is that better? Is that a better way of putting it?
Yeah, I like being a straggler. Is it straggler or scraggler? I don't know. We're going to look this up. Yesterday, I had a wordle, I have to say, on the New York Times, because the word was quash, Quash, which I did not know existed. I thought it was squash. My whole life, I thought that you squash something in a court of law, not quash it. And that opened an entire debate in the office. So it wouldn't be the whole.
Well, let's call you a straggler. And let's say I'm looking forward to you being a straggler when we get together on June 19th. Shameless plug for June 19th, guys, for the Scale, Truvy, and Good Morning Hospitality Europe meetup, the social that's going on in Barcelona. Paul, are we going to convince you to jump on a plane and come and see us in Barcelona?
Possibly, yes. June the 19th, isn't it? I'm giving you guys even more of a plug here. I'm certainly going to try to make it. Funnily enough, Sarah, I'm actually in Spain next week in Madrid. So, and I'm seeing the temperatures at the moment, like high 30s, even 40s in like Seville, Cordoba way, and given my complexion, I'm a bit nervous about it. So it's but yes, I'll certainly try and be there, and we'll see what happens.
Certainly, for anyone listening and not watching, Paul is like myself. Is very fair-skinned and struggles a little bit in sun. I like that. So that's a good way of describing it, isn't it? Okay, we'll all look out on June 19th. Lots of sun hats and sun cream. You've got more hair to shade you, though, Paul. So lucky you, gang. Gang, let's get into it because I have no news. I have actually no news. I just did the nursery run this morning. I mean, I got all of the human beings that I helped get to school, and I got them there on time, and I made it here on time. So that to me feels like a successful week, and nothing else to report. So look, let's get into it. We got some really interesting articles to talk about today, but let's start with, I suppose, the kind of the inevitable one, inevitable as death and taxes. In this case, it is taxes we're going to talk about first, because we just have to. So, Sarah, do you want to start by telling us what's going on in Edinburgh?
Yeah, sure. So Edinburgh is soon going to launch an extra 5% tax on hotel guests, and this is catching on really fast across the UK, which means that there are talks now of this impacting both hostels as well as short-term rentals and cruise lines, which is the only one that I'm actually excited about. So yeah, it's basically it's going to be an additional 5% hotel bed tax, and this is going to be starting in July of 2026 in Edinburgh. They announced this last August, and of course this has then spawned a wave of additional tourist tax announcements across the UK. So yeah, let's see if it actually dampens. Essentially, kind of what they were going on about was, as we talked about, I think last week or week before, when there's festivals going on in the city in particular. I mean, you got 4 million people in a town of 500,000, so it can definitely experience some over tourism, sort of a victim of its own success. And I think the idea is that this tax is going to, at a minimum, have some impact on the ability to kind of respond to some of the over-tourism that's taking place. I don't think it's going to dampen people going to Edinburgh or anywhere else. I think it's just a money grab, as they always are, but there's my soapbox on the subject. So
I feel like the money grab point is 100% accurate, right? Like we know that our local councils are all running out of money. So is it necessarily... Is there a wider philosophical point to this, or is it just that we want to make some more cash from the tourists that come into our town? And I would say that I do also really like the idea that cruise ships are getting taxed. And I would say, why not have a tax based on how much ecological impact you're having on the space you're using as well, right? So if a hotel guest and a short-term rental guest might be at 5% tax, why not put a cruise ship guest at 12%? Because you're having more ecological impact and you're paying less into the local economy because you're in and out, right? You're probably eating your meals on the cruise ship. So it's talk about that, like city planning, what type of impact you're trying to have and what type of city are you trying to build, right? For tourist needs. Also, the very kind of populist answer would be, and I'm not saying that it's as simple as this, but the populist answer would be, look, tax people and use that money to build more houses in these cities so that more locals have places to live. I'm not saying that's what necessarily will happen here, because it's not as simple as that. But, do we think, Paul, that this will in any way deter people from traveling, or is it just a money grab?
I think it's really encouraging that in this article, it's mentioning hotels and cruise liners as well, because we do want to have, if these levies do come in and they do apply to short-term rentals, you do want to see some sort of equal treatment to short-term rentals and not just alienating this as a real estate asset class. And of course, we're starting to see some more of these levies come in, and more taxes being applied to people coming into the UK already with the electronic tax tax authorization. But I would note, I think if we look at some of the other taxes that are coming in around the world, this is nothing new. I did look, actually, Bhutan is the market in the world that has the highest tourist tax, and it's something like $100 a day, which sounds incredibly high when you compare this. I think we're looking at something like £7 a day. I might be wrong on the number for this particular story, but of course they're attracting far fewer numbers of guests. Then if you look at somewhere like Mallorca, where the over tourism protests have been very prominent, and across Spain and Canary Islands too, their tourist taxes, I believe, someone might correct me, are about €4 a day. And from what I can see, it really hasn't deterred tourists too much. I think my concerns would be still, how are the tax is going to be charged and collected. And I think you need to have some sort of transparency there of where those taxes are going, because I think maybe the majority of travellers would say that they would be prepared to pay a little bit more, but just as long as there's that transparency and it's going to the right place.
And that's right, Paul. And also, I read in the last couple of days that the Spanish government is proposing to impose a 21% VAT on short-term rentals. So that's a slightly different mechanism for taxing it, but equally feels like it's another government trying to walk the tightrope between wanting to have tourists because they know how useful it is for their economy, but also bowing to protests or local pressure around the idea that there's a housing crisis. So it's using it as a revenue raise opportunity to try and build. And I think that's really interesting because Spain is the country that has had the most protests. But as you say, just a tourist tax on its own €4 a day is not going to move the needle. I mean, it's 1 pint of lager. Which we all know British tourists like to have at least 10 pints of lager per day on their holidays, so it's not going to move the needle for sure. Alrighty, let's talk about Easter and how the start of the spring and early summer season is looking. Sarah, got a wonderful report here from your paymasters at AirDNA. Tell us a little bit about it, my friend.
Yeah, sure. So overall, I think there's not going to be a whole lot of surprise in this, but we did see quite a bit of increased demand in April, up 27.4% year over year. But this is mostly driven by the fact that Easter was in April this year instead of in March. And in Munich for the Champions League final weekend, Leo, which there's your little nod to football. There you go. Demand soared 81% for that weekend compared with the weekend prior, which is pretty impressive. France is still maintaining fairly steady in terms of its international visitors, despite a lot of the kind of political and economic things that have been going on, sort of anti-tourism in Paris for a while, in particular, and across France. And then forward bookings for summer are actually looking really good across most of Europe's top markets for the sector. So those are kind of the highlights. I think as well, if we look at sort of available listings, sorry, you're looking at a 7.1% increase compared with last year in the month of April. So again, you've got this increase in demand, which, as we mentioned, is 27.4% higher than it was last year. But part of that's due to Easter, and the supply is trying to raise itself. No, trying to rise to meet that, increase in demand, but not quite there yet. When we look at ADRs, small increase, 4.2% compared with last year. Average is €150 a night. Occupancy, however, 59% for the month of April, which is 18% higher than last year. And so when we kind of look at that all combined between the ADR and the occupancy, and we look at revenue per available rental night, or RevPAR, that's led to a 23% increase year over year. So a lot of interesting stuff happening in April. I don't know if there's anything in particular you want to dive deeper into, or comment on why you think we're not quite meeting the demand as well as maybe we have in other things. That was the thing that caught my eye. Was normally, as a short-term rental industry, we're very good at kind of that flexibility of supply, and as soon as there's anybody notices an increase in demand, we're pretty quick to fill that. But it seems like we're not quite keeping up, which may have something to do with a lot of the regulations and people just thinking, I can't be bothered. Yeah.
I agree. I think that's where my mind went with it straight away. I mean, basically, the headline here is these figures are very encouraging. And I read Jamie Lane's report on the US, and it's definitely looking flatter by comparison. Still, I wouldn't say, well, actually, when you look at summer pacing, it's behind where it was 12 months ago, right? So coming into the summer, the US, and that, of course, could change. But, summer pacing looks very, very good for Europe. Obviously, the Easter effect in April has made a massive difference. But I think even if you took Easter out of the equation, you're still looking at a really, really strong performance. I would suspect regulation, I would also suspect the fact that we've actually had quite a flat 24 months. And often the mindset becomes, I don't know, almost business confidence dips, and people aren't thinking about short-term rental, and then it just takes that wallop to happen, and people suddenly realize it's the place to move your asset, or go and acquire more properties, go and convince owners to give you their properties for the summer, because there's lots of money to be made. So it might just be that we're at the start of a slight surge in that respect. But given very, very regulated urban areas, I think it will be in your more traditional holiday towns and coastal towns, especially in traditional Europe. I thought that one thing that was notable as well was the rise of Northern Europe, and especially Norway. Again, I think we've talked about this. If tourists don't feel welcome coming down to the Mediterranean, they might be looking closer to home, especially as summers get warmer in Northern Europe. So that's a trend we talked about. I think actually, Sarah, we talked about that at the start of the year as one of our predictions for the summer. Someone have to go back and check that for me. But so I think that was notable for sure. And then I guess my final thought was, if you're managing property right now for the summer, hold firm on your pricing. Make sure you're not dropping, because summer's looking really exciting, and that is a really cool place to be as an operator come the end of May, because normally the last couple of years it's been a bit more. What should I do? Is it time to drop? Do I want to catch that booking before someone else catches it? So yeah, overall, very, very happy. What do you think, Paul?
Yeah, no, I'd concur very much with what's been said. I think, adding to what you said, Sarah, I think what's really exciting about this is seeing that there's some increased consumer confidence, and this certainly seems to be translating to increased domestic tourism and intra-European tourism. I also note as well about easing inflation, and perhaps this is, we're going to see benefits to Europe at a time when, of course, there is the uncertainty in the States and tariffs. And I know you've talked quite extensively about that already. But I think at the moment the European market is quite ripe for growth and strength this summer. So we'll wait and see what happens. But the figures are certainly exciting.
Yeah, and I wonder how much of it can be attributed to the European tourists not even visiting America, as you just hinted at there, Paul. That will be interesting. We'll be interested to get the data on that at the end of the summer, I think. Certainly because we don't know exactly what will happen now with the tariffs, but it looks like it's easing. Also, I think, Sarah, you mentioned this a couple of weeks ago, how many Canadians you'd been hearing around Europe, seeing around Europe. So I think they're also wanting to perhaps not come down and do their traditional holidays in the US right now. So perhaps there is a little bit of a benefit of that. But I would think it's more increasingly it is just consumer confidence, right? And the fact that we've got falling inflation. So yeah, look, it's been a challenging couple of years, so it's very, very exciting to see it happen. Great. Well, look, I think Paul, it's time to have you on to focus on. You wrote a good article on this in Paul's Pulse on LinkedIn. If anyone's not checked it out, you should be subscribing to it and reading it. Talking about the Booking.com cuts direct affiliate partnerships. Tell us a bit more.
Yeah, so thank you firstly for having me on to talk about it, and getting to explore some different topics is quite exciting too. And it's been prompted by a couple of things that we've seen in the news. I know in your last talk you were talking about the situation in the Balearics with the potential controversy around selfie tourism, and then we've had the news this week about Booking.com sort of terminating, it appears, its direct partnership with some content creators and influencers. And I think it's quite an interesting situation at the moment, because we're on a podcast right now. I think we're all becoming content creators, or I don't particularly like the word influencer, but in our own right, many more of us are becoming content creators in our own right. And I think that there's perhaps something of a reckoning coming with the relationship between some of these platforms and the creators, because Booking.com, it appears anyway from what I've seen in the story, that they're finishing a lot of these partnerships with some of the creators who are earning generating commissions on the lower side, but they're keeping those with commissions of around $1,000 plus. And I just think that, we're perhaps in a situation where there is going to be a bit of a reckoning, a little bit of tension, where the creators perhaps need to decide whether they are going to become affiliates with these platforms or go it alone as some sort of independent brands, because we're seeing a rise in influencer-led travel. We're seeing across social media with TikTok and Instagram, more people deciding and fueling inspiration from what they're seeing on social media. And yeah, I think that there's also perhaps some sort of void in the travel industry, really, where we can fill it with people who are promoting, and we've talked about it sort of already on this pod, but people who really promote sustainable travel, authentic travel, responsible travel. I think there's a real gap in the market for something like that, and perhaps moving away from this travel idealism where people can travel and they're just maybe being quite ostentatious about it. I think there needs to be more of a purpose to these to the sort of content that we're creating. Not that there's not a market for that, but I think that there's so many aspects of this we can explore, and as many more of us are becoming content creators, I think, and influencers and broadcasters, I think it's something worth commenting on for sure.
What do you think, Sarah?
I think for me, this is part of it, on the part of booking at least, it's them trying to cut expenses. I think they realize that people are going to talk about them whether they pay them or not. And it's essentially using the content that's going to be created, without having to pay them, right? And this is something that we see really often with brands. Brands do something really similar, which is, wow, people are going to talk about my product anyway. Why would I pay them to do that anyway? So we're very much coming to this this idea of brands thinking that they're so ubiquitous that they don't have to pay for this kind of advertising or this kind of publicity. And also it's kind of a stunt, I think. I mean, imagine one day to the next, like, not only is it money saving, which we know Booking.com's been going through, in particular, announced a whole bunch of layoffs, which is still not totally finalized, right? So we're still going to see, I think, some layoffs coming out, and some of those announcements. But ultimately, I think they've done the research. If a company like Booking.com, which runs, I don't know, I don't remember what the number was, but it's something ridiculous, like, I don't know, 1,000 different A/B, they're not even A/B tests, they're like A/B to Z tests, like at a minute. They've done the research. They know that it doesn't actually, either it doesn't tip the needle for them in a serious, meaningful way, or they believe that those creators are going to continue talking about them regardless. And that they're still going to have access to kind of that audience that they have access to now without paying for it. So for me, it's just very abrupt. And I think it could backfire if they get the wrong kind of press on it. But I also know that if they're doing this, they've done the research. So they know something we don't know.
Could it point to the use of AI as well? That's obviously one of the talking points in this article.
Yeah, well, it's come. All the OTAs are exploring influencer-led travel to some extent. We've covered Booking.com, so I don't need to expand too much more on that. Expedia's recently launched more of this trip matching strategy, and we know that they are heavily experimenting with their AI strategy. Yeah, I mean, your colleague, your CEO Humphrey, was talking about this digital sharecropping concept, which has been I've been seeing all over social media, and I think that is probably coming a bit more to the fore. But AI competition is certainly a challenge that a lot of content creators are going to be facing over the next couple of years, building this content and then seemingly being dispensable for these tools and being given 30 days notice on this, especially right at the start of this summer season, which is going to be crucial for them. And already at a time when they're struggling with lower commissions and perhaps being valued less, perhaps even being vilified in some cases. I think it's quite a tough time, really, and that's why I say that they maybe have to look to develop their brand, look to do something a little bit different within the market, and develop and work out what it is they actually want to get out of these, and not rely so heavily on third-party platforms.
I think that's right. And on that, the notion that you could make partnerships with local SDR operators, right, instead of making your partnership at the macro level with someone like Booking.com, Expedia, Airbnb, you're engaging with, or if you're a short-term rental operator, this is the time to think about engaging with the influencer community and saying, look, there's real marketing commission here for you if you can drive traffic towards our rental. If it's if you've done something really radical, you've built a tree house and you want people to suddenly get eyeballs on it, or you're by the sea and it's the summer, or it's the mountains during winter, whatever it is that you think, it does give you an opportunity potentially to pick up the influencers that are no longer going to be busy being paid by somebody else. So potentially there's a actionable insight sneaking in there. Who knows? I do think that the concept of people buying from people that look like them is obviously at the core of this. And so your point on can we be a bit more environmentally focused? I totally think that's where the wind is blowing in Europe. People, especially with the younger generation, how can I have less ecological impact when I'm on the road, when I'm traveling? So I think content will naturally go in that direction because it's a reflection. Creators and influencers are a reflection of society. They're not outside of it or adjacent to it. They are a direct reflection of it, which is why people want to buy things that they're promoting. So I think it's a really good trend to keep an eye on, Paul, I think. And I'm actually convinced it will happen. And as such, I think that does give local operators a chance to talk about what's amazing about their market and where to go to beat the crowds and where to go to have the least environmental impact whilst still enjoying yourself, versus going back to our Balearic Islands chat last week, Sarah, just queuing up to get that selfie at sunset, when actually you turn around, there's 1,000 other people doing exactly the same thing. So making sure that travel is also authentic, and everybody needs it to be authentic, because that's what's going to keep the crowds coming back time after time. Not, I went somewhere that I saw on social and actually it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. Wow, what a complete ripoff.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's very interesting. And then classic Sarah being cynical and following the money. Yeah, I'm sure you're right. I'm sure they test it and they don't think it'll have any impact. But potentially it doesn't have an impact in the short term, but it might well do in the long term if people react to the market and take those influencers with them,
Well, we shall see. What's that they say? Hell hath no fury, like an influencer scorned. They do. They have a massive platform. If they want to kick off, then they can. So I don't know. I think it's a delicate balance. And I'm really keen to see kind of how it all shakes out with AI. And I'm also curious if there's going to be a lot more AI created content that would replace influencers, right? Like I'm thinking maybe that's like an avatar of like this person who goes around to either different properties or that doesn't actually exist. There's so many deep fakes and so much cool stuff you can do with AI. Like, do we even need influencers? Or if you're an influencer, do you even have to be you? Could you create this like alter ego so that actually you kind of have the best of both worlds, where you're basically famous, but nobody actually knows what you look like. So maybe it's like they're similar enough to you, but totally different. And then you can actually go out and about. So I don't know.
I think undoubtedly I think that's a really good point. Someone showed me in our sales team, a demo video we're sending out to people if they miss their appointment, or if we want to show them our product before their appointment. And we have this AI generated person talking about our product. And I'll be honest with you, she talks about it much more eloquently and articulately than I've ever talked about our product. So, it's amazing. It's completely amazing. Yeah, I think you're probably right. Cool. Okay. Well, look, I think we're at time. Audience, we were a bit worried that Paul's got an electrician coming to the house, and we were worried he was going to lose power.
So far, no.
Paul, would you come back? Will you come back on?
Yeah. If you'll have me, and I haven't been, if I don't lower your viewership numbers for 1 week, so yeah,
we'll let you know next week, then, Paul. Okay, but look, a verbal contract
you.
is binding, so thank you very much. That's great to have you signed up. And Sarah, my friend, what's going on with you? What are you up to for the rest of the weekend?
I am going on a hiking trip this weekend. So, too much alcohol last night, and this weekend hiking trip. So it's balance. No, I'm going with a group of friends and my dog to Petroforca, which is like a pretty massive mountain. I don't know. It's like a 2-hour drive away from here. And it is a product of overtourism. It's become so popular that it is eroding. So much so that the trail I was going to do to like climb the summit, I can't do it with my dog. So I'm obviously not doing it. And I'm going to do like a 360, 17-kilometer loop around the mountain instead of climbing the mountain. But it should be really fun. We just rented a couple of bungalows, like in a camping, and it's like really old school, like barbecue, chill situation. So, yeah.
Amazing.
Good for you. Good for you. Well, as you guys know, I've recently moved to Brighton, so we've been exploring the South Downs every chance we get. So I'll be out hiking as well on Sunday. But hiking with my daughter is us probably doing 2 kilometers, and then her being distracted by a stone or or the animals. So it's very cute, but it wouldn't necessarily say it's a high burn exercise. Alrighty, gang. Well, look, Paul, thank you again. It's been great having you, buddy.
Thank you for having me, and great to see you both doing well too.
Gang, if you've enjoyed today's show, please hit like, share, subscribe in all the usual places, all the usual social places. If you are in and around Spain, Barcelona, Europe, or hell, within a 2-hour flight, come and see us on June 19th. Come, and Sarah, we know Sarah stays out late. She just told us she does. So come on, it's going to be fun. All right, thanks, gang. We'll see you again next week. Goodbye.